The early tanks of World War I are usually a more overlooked topic compared to the World War II designs, as they were very new weapons at that time and only a few successful ones emerged. But there were a lot of interesting and unique designs proposed and tried before the first actually combat-usable types appeared in the second part of the war. One of these early attempts was the so-called Boireault machine, which was actually built and participated in army trials. This is the vehicle which we will look at today. After the outbreak of the First World War, it quickly became obvious this will be a different type of warfare than any other known before. The wide use of heavy artillery and the first use of machine guns changed the face of the war forever. The opposing troops were hiding in trenches to be protected from enemy fire, and between them lay the so-called no man's land, filled with bomb craters and barbed wire, a terrifying landscape that held back any advances. The armies were looking for a solution to get rid of the barbed wire and cross the trenches, a machine that can break through the obstacles and clear the way for the infantry. Louis Boireault had just the idea for such a machine at the end of 1914. Being an experienced railway engineer who held dozens of patents, he used his knowledge to design a machine that in theory can cross the no man's land. The vehicle of course had to be armored, but wheeled vehicles could not be used for this type of mission. Since Boireault thought the early tracked vehicles, like the Holt agricultural tractors, were not big enough, he used his expertise in railway design and envisioned a vehicle using giant steel frames, similar to train tracks, laying them down in front of itself. The French military was interested in his design, as at that time they were just experimented with different solutions, and after examining the plans, his design was approved for testing in January 1915. The so-called barbed wire crushing Boireault machine was built and presented to the military just a bit more than a month later. This machine, even with the standards of the time, was a very strange one. It used a pyramid-shaped center body, housing the engine and the crew, and 6 giant rigid metal frames rolling around the body. These looked more like train tracks than the later ones used on tanks. The machine was immensely big, 8 meters long, 3 meters wide, and more than 4 meters tall. The engine actually was mounted at the top, which in theory kept it safe from the mud, but also made the vehicle very top-heavy. It weighted about 30 tons, and the engine produced only 80 horsepower, resulting in the machine reaching a top speed of barely 2 km an hour, and this performance was measured without any kind of armor or armament on it. But that was not the biggest issue with the vehicle. By using these rigid giant metal tracks, it had no steering. The only way to change direction was to stop, the crew had to dismount, lift the whole vehicle with jacks and turn it. After the trials, a report was submitted, covering the performance of the vehicle and all its drawbacks. And by June 1915, the project was officially stopped. But the engineer insisted he could improve the design, and since by that time there were still no usable tank designs, the ministry was willing to give the design another look. The modified variant was tested again in November, this time carrying 9 tons of ballast, simulating armor and weaponry. The main modifications were installation of internal jacks for turning, allowing the crew to change directions without leaving the vehicle, which under enemy fire would have been suicide. But still, it had to stop completely for the process. The jacks needed to raise the whole vehicle, and then it could turn a maximum of 45 degrees. Then it was lowered and continued to the new direction. The new features, though they improved the vehicle, didn't balance out its faults, and it was rejected again. The inventor, however, still didn't give up. Though his design was cumbersome and problematic, it proved to be successful in the role it was designed for, easily crossing trenches and destroying the barbed wire traps. So after these failures, he developed a second machine, this time with more drastic changes to the original design. The second variant of the Boireault machine was smaller, the center body armored, and used different tracks, which were smaller and more compact, but also more durable and heavier. The main body of the vehicle also changed from the tall pyramid shape to a more compact design, which carried the engine at the bottom this time. As a result, it had lower center of gravity and a lower profile. Though the video footage you are watching shows the vehicle without armor plating, for the trials it actually was fully armored. The new design was only around 6 meters long and 3 meters tall, but it stayed the same 3 meters wide, so the vehicle could still be transported by train. The tracks also had a bit of flexibility at the couplings, and though the exact working of the mechanism is unknown, but with the use of hydraulic jacks installed on the frame, they could be pushed to one side or another, thus allowing the crew to steer the vehicle, though in a very much limited range. When I say limited, I mean the machine had a turning radius of around 100 meters. However, though the second design featured many improvements, its speed on the other hand dropped to a glacial 1 km an hour. It was intended to carry machine guns on side sponsons, like the later British tanks, but the type never actually made it further than the basic trials. Though it was tested in August 1916 and run without problems, and as intended it crossed trenches and destroyed obstacles easily, but the drawbacks were just too obvious. The machine had some good points. It was capable of clearing a way through the obstacles, but it was too big, cumbersome and noisy, and with its low speed, a very good target for enemy weapons. It was again rejected for military use, but later trials were conducted to use the type as a bridge layer machine for other vehicles. However, in the end these trials never led to any practical use. Only a few months after the second variant of the Boireault machine was tested, the first actually usable tanks started to appear. First, the British Mark I tank saw action on the front in September 1916, at the Battle of Somme. Not long after, in early 1917, the French models started to appear as well, like the Schneider CA1 or the Saint-Chamond, both of them based on the previously mentioned Holt tractors. Later, the shortcomings of these designs led to the use of the smaller Renault FT type in numbers, but we will look at these vehicles in separate videos. Though the Boireault machine was just one of the very extreme and interesting designs that appeared early in the Great War, it's still worth remembering, as it tried to use a unique solution for a new kind of challenge. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and in the comments let me know if there's any interesting events or vehicles you'd like to see.